Have you ever felt like no matter how much you meditate, read spiritual texts, or attend workshops, there's something holding you back from true enlightenment? What if the answer isn't something you need to learn or gain, but something you must confront and overcome? Every spiritual path has its challenges, but there's one obstacle so universal, so deeply ingrained, that it silently blocks millions from reaching higher states of consciousness. This isn't just a stumbling block, it's the wall standing between you and your spiritual awakening. What is it? It's the ego's resistance to surrender. The ego clings to control, thrives on fear, and whispers doubts into your mind. It convinces you to stay in your comfort zone, attach to old wounds, and identify with fleeting thoughts and emotions. But here's the secret. Enlightenment demands the opposite. It requires you to let go of fear, control, and even the idea of who you think you are. In today's journey, we'll explore the true nature of the ego and why it resists surrender, how this resistance manifests in your daily life, often without you realizing it. Powerful practices to break free from this cycle and open the door to spiritual enlightenment. By the end of this, you'll not only understand what's holding you back, but also have the tools to overcome it and align with your highest self. Are you ready to face the one thing standing between you and the spiritual awakening you've been seeking? What is the ego, and why does it resist spiritual enlightenment? To understand what's standing in your way, we must first understand the ego. Contrary to popular belief, the ego isn't just arrogance or pride. It's the identity you've constructed over time, your sense of self, shaped by memories, beliefs, fears, and attachments. While the ego can serve as a tool for navigating the material world, its grip can become a cage when it comes to spiritual growth. The ego's illusion of control. At its core, the ego thrives on separation. It tells you, you are what you own. You are what others think of you. You must control your life to feel secure. These narratives create a false sense of safety, convincing you to cling to external validation and material achievements. However, spiritual enlightenment requires unity, recognizing that you are not separate from others or the universe. This threatens the ego, which clings tightly to its illusions of control and individuality. Why the ego resists surrender. Surrender is the foundation of enlightenment. To reach higher states of consciousness, you must let go of attachments, fears, and even your identity. But here's the problem. The ego interprets surrender as annihilation. It fears that by letting go, it will cease to exist. This resistance manifests in subtle but powerful ways. Doubt. The ego whispers, "This spiritual journey is pointless," or "You're not capable of reaching enlightenment." Fear. It amplifies fear of the unknown, making you hesitate to take the next step. Distraction. It keeps you focused on external concerns, such as status or achievements, rather than inner growth. The ego's favorite tools of resistance. The ego doesn't just resist passively, it actively works to maintain its grip. Here's how. Attachment. By tying your happiness to people, possessions, or outcomes, the ego keeps you in a cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. Judgment. It encourages you to judge others and yourself, reinforcing the idea of separation. Victimhood. It convinces you that life happens to you, fostering resentment and disempowerment. Each of these tools strengthens the ego's hold and keeps you from experiencing the unity and freedom required for enlightenment. How resistance shows up in your life. Often, the ego's resistance is so ingrained that you don't even recognize it. Here are some common signs. Avoidance of stillness. You find it difficult to meditate or sit with your thoughts, as the ego fears losing control in silence. Overthinking and anxiety. the ego creates endless loops of worry, keeping you trapped in the mind rather than the present moment. Comparison. It encourages you to measure your progress against others, pulling you away from your unique path. The spiritual perspective on the ego. Many spiritual teachings, from Buddhism to Advaita Vedanta, describe the ego as a veil obscuring your true nature. Your essence, pure awareness or the higher self, is always present, but the ego creates noise that drowns out this inner truth. The great spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle explains that the ego's survival depends on time. It lives in the past and future but cannot exist in the present moment. Enlightenment, by contrast, is rooted in the timeless now. Why the ego blocks spiritual enlightenment. If enlightenment is the natural state of being, pure awareness free from illusion, then why is it so difficult to attain? The answer lies in the ego's relentless grip on your thoughts, emotions, and sense of identity. The ego's resistance isn't just a passive force. It actively works to keep you from the freedom and unity that enlightenment offers. The ego thrives on separation. At its core, the ego identifies itself as separate from the world around it. It says, "I am this body, this mind, this name," and insists on maintaining boundaries between me and everything else. This illusion of separation creates a fundamental barrier to enlightenment, which is rooted in the understanding of oneness, the realization that you are not separate but part of the infinite whole. In this state of separation, the ego thrives on comparison, measuring your worth against others; possession, attaching your identity to material things or relationships; fear, guarding against perceived threats to your individuality. Enlightenment, by contrast, is the dissolution of these boundaries. It requires surrendering the idea of I to experience the infinite. For the ego, this surrender feels like death, a direct threat to its survival. The ego as the source of suffering. Spiritual traditions, from Buddhism to Hinduism, teach that the ego is the root of all suffering. Here's why. Attachment. The ego attaches itself to fleeting pleasures and external outcomes. When these things inevitably change or disappear, suffering follows. Aversion. It pushes away discomfort, resisting the natural flow of life. Identification. The ego identifies with thoughts and emotions, turning temporary experiences into fixed labels. I am angry. I am unworthy. These patterns keep you locked in a cycle of craving and aversion, unable to access the peace and liberation of your true self. How the ego blocks key aspects of enlightenment presence. Enlightenment is found in the present moment, but the ego constantly pulls you into the past. Regret, resentment, or the future fear, anxiety. Compassion. Enlightenment opens the heart to unconditional love, but the ego fosters judgment and division, seeing others as competitors or threats. Freedom. True spiritual freedom requires releasing control, but the ego demands control over every aspect of life, creating resistance to change. The illusion of spiritual ego. Even on the spiritual path, the ego finds ways to survive. This phenomenon is often called the spiritual ego, when the ego co-opts your spiritual progress to reinforce itself. It might sound like, I am more enlightened than others. I follow the perfect practices, so I'm superior. I've overcome the ego already. This trap is particularly dangerous because it disguises itself as progress. True enlightenment is humble and selfless, while the spiritual ego is competitive and self-serving. The fear of letting go. One of the ego's most powerful tactics is fear. It convinces you that letting go of control, attachments, or even your sense of self is dangerous. It might say, if I surrender, I'll lose everything I care about. Without my identity, who will I be? But here's the paradox. True surrender doesn't erase you. It reveals your essence. When you let go of the ego's illusions, you don't disappear. You become more aligned with your infinite, authentic self. Why overcoming the ego is non-negotiable. Spiritual enlightenment isn't a luxury or a nice-to-have. It's the natural state of being, free from the ego's chains. Until the ego is transcended, its resistance will continue to block. Clarity, your ability to see beyond illusions. Peace, the stillness that comes from being fully present. Unity, the deep connection with the divine and all existence. This doesn't mean the ego must be destroyed, only transcended. By becoming aware of the ego's tricks and learning to disidentify from it, you can begin to experience life beyond its limitations. How to overcome the ego and open the path to spiritual enlightenment. If the ego is the wall blocking your spiritual awakening, then the key to enlightenment lies in learning how to transcend it. This isn't about destroying the ego. That would only create more resistance. Instead, it's about recognizing the ego for what it is, a tool for navigating the material world, not the essence of who you are. Here are powerful strategies to loosen the ego's grip and align with your higher self. 1. Cultivate presence through mindfulness. The ego thrives on the past and future, replaying old wounds or worrying about what's to come. But enlightenment is found in the present moment, where the ego loses its power. Mindfulness practices help you anchor yourself in the now, dissolving the illusions of the ego. Meditation. Start with simple breath awareness. As thoughts arise, observe them without judgment. This practice teaches you to witness the ego's chatter without identifying with it. Daily presence. Bring awareness to everyday activities, like eating or walking. Notice the sensations, sounds, and sights around you. The more present you are, the less control the ego has. Mindfulness isn't about silencing the mind. It's about realizing that you are not the mind. 2. Practice radical surrender. The ego resists surrender because it fears losing control. But surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing the need to control every outcome and trusting the flow of life. Let go of attachments. Reflect on the things you cling to, relationships, possessions, even beliefs. Ask yourself, if I let this go, who am I? You'll begin to see that your essence remains intact no matter what you release. Accept what is. Instead of resisting challenges, embrace them as opportunities for growth. As the spiritual teacher Byron Katie says, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100 of the time. True surrender allows you to align with the universe's natural flow, where clarity and peace reside. 3. Observe the ego without judgment. The ego gains strength when you fight it or judge yourself for its influence. Instead, practice observing the ego with curiosity. When you feel anger, fear, or jealousy, pause and ask, where is this coming from? What story is the ego telling me right now? By becoming a neutral observer, you create space between your true self and the ego's reactions. This space is where transformation happens. 4. Embrace humility and service. The ego often seeks validation, recognition, and superiority. One of the most effective ways to transcend it is through acts of humility and service. These practices shift your focus from me to we, dissolving the illusion of separation. Serve others, volunteer, help a friend, or simply listen without judgment. Service connects you to the universal truth that we are all one. Cultivate gratitude. Gratitude dissolves the ego's focus on what's lacking, reminding you of the abundance already present in your life. Humility isn't about diminishing yourself. It's about recognizing the infinite worth of all beings, including yourself. 5. Use the body as a gateway. Spiritual enlightenment isn't just a mental process, it involves the body as well. The ego often manifests through tension, stress, or restlessness in the body. Practices like yoga, tai chi, or breathwork help release these blockages and bring you into alignment. Body awareness. During meditation, scan your body for areas of tension. Breathe into those spaces and visualize them softening. Movement. Practices. Activities like yoga combine mindfulness and physicality, grounding you in the present moment. When the body is relaxed and aligned, the mind becomes quieter, and the ego's influence diminishes. 6. Connect with the infinite. The ultimate way to overcome the ego is to experience something greater than yourself. This might happen in moments of deep meditation, through nature, or during profound spiritual experiences. These moments remind you that you are not separate, you are part of the infinite. Meditate on unity. Visualize yourself dissolving into the universe, merging with its vastness. Spend time in nature. Nature has no ego. Its cycles, stillness, and beauty reflect the harmony you seek within. When you experience oneness, the ego naturally quiets, replaced by a deep sense of peace and connection. The journey is the goal. Overcoming the ego isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong practice of awareness, surrender, and alignment. Along the way, you'll notice glimpses of enlightenment, moments of stillness, clarity, and love. These are reminders that your true self is already present, waiting for you to uncover it. The ego's resistance may feel strong, but your essence is stronger. Every step you take toward presence, surrender, and unity is a step toward the enlightenment that has always been within your reach. Are you ready to face the ego's hold on your life? Pause for a moment and consider this. How often do you feel truly at peace? How often do your thoughts race with worry, fear, or comparison? These are the subtle ways the ego holds its grip over your mind, quietly keeping you from the freedom and joy that enlightenment offers. The journey toward enlightenment isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. Each time you notice the ego's influence, whether through judgment, attachment, or resistance, you're taking a step closer to your true self. But the question remains, are you ready to face what's been holding you back? Signs the ego may be limiting. You reflect on these scenarios. Do you find it difficult to sit in silence, feeling the urge to distract yourself? Are you constantly striving for external validation, like success, status, or approval? Do you struggle to forgive, holding on to old wounds and judgments? If any of these resonate with you, it's not a sign of failure, it's an invitation. The ego isn't an enemy, it's a teacher, revealing where you need to grow and heal. The cost of avoiding this work. Think about what's at stake if you don't confront the ego's resistance. Without awareness, the ego will continue to keep you in a cycle of dissatisfaction, always chasing what's next. Create division, making you feel isolated or disconnected from others. Block your access to inner peace and the profound sense of unity that comes with spiritual awakening. But what if you chose differently? What if you decided that now is the time to face the ego and begin the process of transcendence? Imagine a life beyond the ego. Picture this. Waking up each day with a sense of calm and clarity, unburdened by worry or fear. Experiencing deep, authentic connections with others, free from judgment or comparison. Feeling a profound sense of purpose, knowing you're aligned with your true self. This isn't just a dream, it's what lies on the other side of the ego's resistance. Every step you take toward surrender and presence brings you closer to this reality. Questions to ponder. Take some time to reflect on these questions. What are the fears or attachments that hold you back from letting go? How has the ego shaped the way you see yourself and the world? What would your life look like if you fully embraced surrender and unity? These aren't questions to answer quickly. Sit with them. Journal about them. Let them guide your next steps on your spiritual journey. You're not alone on this path. Remember, the journey toward enlightenment is not meant to be walked alone. Share your reflections in the comments. Your experiences, struggles, and insights could inspire others who are facing the same challenges. Engage with others on the path. By opening up, you create a space of mutual support and growth, dissolving the ego's illusion of separation. Your choice, freedom or resistance. In every moment you have a choice, to listen to the ego's fears and remain in its grip, or to step into the unknown and discover your true self. What will you choose? The first step is simple. Become aware. Notice when the ego arises, and gently remind yourself that you are not your thoughts, fears, or attachments. You are the observer, the presence behind it all. And if you feel ready, take the next step. Explore the practices shared today, reflect deeply, and start dismantling the walls the ego has built. The ego, a doorway to your true self. The journey to enlightenment begins with a single realization. The ego isn't who you are. It's a shadow, a construct, a veil that has covered your true essence. Overcoming the ego isn't about fighting it. It's about seeing through it, surrendering its illusions and stepping into the infinite light of your higher self. Imagine a life free from the need to control, compare, or cling. A life where you feel connected to all things, guided by clarity, love, and inner peace. That life is within your reach, but only if you're willing to face the resistance that's been holding you back. What's your next step? Take a moment to reflect on what resonated with you today. Share your thoughts in the comments. What part of the ego do you feel ready to confront? How will you start practicing presence, surrender, or humility? Your insights might inspire someone else to begin their journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more guidance on unlocking your spiritual potential. Together, we can create a community dedicated to awakening and transformation. The path to enlightenment is already within you. Will you take the first step